Hello, everybody, and welcome to another special episode of This Week in Travel. This is a special collector's edition, so you're going to want to save this one. This is the one with the foil cover, so it's going to be valuable in years to come. My name is Gary Arndt, coming to you again from beautiful Minneapolis, where it's not cold anymore. It's been like in the 30s and 40s, like all spring, and then it just finally hit nice temperatures. The trees have started to bud. Everyone's outside, and it's beautiful. The time where it sucks to be in this city is past us, and now it's the part of the year where it's actually nice to be here. Joining me, as usual, the man so nice they named him twice, Mr. Chris Christensen. How are you doing, sir?
Well, this is going to be the episode that people are going to be glad they're listening to it instead of watching it, because I literally just rolled out of bed, too. If I can quote Gary Arndt, I literally just rolled out of bed.
Chris, I can assure you that's true every one we record. The people watching it on YouTube are really diehard, or they just don't know how to make podcasts work. Also joining us, the only person on this show without her own podcast. How does it feel to be the odd one out? Jen Leo.
Should I leave this collector's edition since I don't have my own?
No, you are what make it special.
You are the weakest link.
This is the only way people can hear you on a podcast.
Oh,
so that makes it very special. And joining us on the show once again, but we get to introduce her in a different way this time. She is now the woman behind the Where Else to Go podcast. Please welcome Mary Jo Manzanares.
Hi, it's so nice to talk with you guys.
I mean, in the past, we've always introduced you as director of the TBEX conference, but now you have your own podcast, and we'll be talking about that soon. But congratulations on it.
Thank you.
And I've heard that one of your upcoming episodes is probably going to be your greatest episode ever.
That's what I hear. That's going to be released tomorrow morning. And boy, people are going to want to be on the edge of their seats waiting for that one.
So is Gary going to be on your show, or what's going on here?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's start with some news stories. I think we need to start with our obligatory someone gets kicked off a plane. And this comes from The Independent in the UK. On an American Airlines flight, there were 4 men kicked off of the flight because they, quote-unquote, looked too Muslim. And it was a flight between Toronto and New York. And what I found kind of interesting about this story is that 2 of the flyers were from Bangladesh. They were flying as a group. Two were Muslim from Bangladesh. One was Arab, also Muslim. And one was a Sikh. And I see this all the time when the subject of Sikhs come up. And Americans really screw this up. They're not Muslim at all. Sikhs are not Muslim. And there was a recent
and not only that, but they wear a very noticeable turban that identifies them as a Sikh. So anybody who's looking looks at them and says, "Oh, look, they're a Sikh."
But there's this notion that people have, and it's a stereotype that isn't even true, that people who wear turbans are Muslim. And the only people who can wear turbans in the 21st century I know of are Sikhs, who are not Muslim. There was a recent regulation or rule that was passed in the U.S. military allowing Sikhs to wear a turban and not cut their hair. And I was reading some of these comments on Facebook, and they're all like, "Oh, we're giving over to the Muslims." I'm like, they're not Muslim. They're not at all.
Wasn't there a Sikh education float in the last Thanksgiving Day parade? Something like that?
Like the one in New York or something?
I want you to Google this right now. Yeah, I think there was, within the past year, maybe 36, maybe 2 years, there was, because of this,
I think we lost Jen.
Really? Right? Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
yes.
Now we can.
Okay. What I was saying is, I think because of this misconception, they did a parade. They did a float at one of the big parades, educating people on it.
I don't know if you remember, but
it apparently didn't work.
But several years ago, there was a shooting in Milwaukee, I think, where someone went to a Sikh temple and shot some people. And he went because he was angry at Muslims.
Oh, gosh.
And it wasn't even the people he was angry at. I mean, it was a mass killing and it was the wrong. I mean, yeah, I
wrong
don't
on
get
so
it.
many levels.
Yeah, if you're gonna hate people, at least get your hatreds right.
But when I read these kinds of stories, I always wonder what else isn't in the story that really is relevant. There's plenty that could be
says
on
the flight
each side.
attendant.
No, on plenty of each side, because there's
Yeah.
any number of missing pieces that make me go, there's always more that we're waiting to come out.
Well, there evidently the story says there was nothing in the complaint saying they were rowdy or did anything. The only thing that was kind of suspicious is that 2 of them were upgraded and 2 of them were not.
Well, it's the story of me every time I travel with friends, so.
Well, let me ask you about this, because we've had several stories on the show that involved the captain, supposedly, or some of the flight crew. They just didn't want someone on a flight. And do they just have unlimited powers to basically kick people off?
Well, yes and no. Ultimately, you need a captain to fly the plane. So depending on where you are, if the captain refuses to fly a plane, what do you have? The answer to that is obviously they can be replaced if there's someone to replace them and another captain brought in to fly. So do they have the authority? Absolutely. They're responsible for the safe passage of both the equipment and the crew and the passengers. Is there a way to remove them? Yeah, if you're somewhere you can get another pilot, sure. So it's never really that cut and dry. I wish examples were that simple, but the really interesting stories are a whole lot more complicated than that.
Oh, tell us one of the real interesting stories, Mary Jo. No names, no airline names.
No, those stories get told over, a glass of wine some evening with the world not listening.
Or on Betty in the Sky with the Suitcases podcast. But.
Yeah.
So if your mind is leaning towards lawsuit, guess what? They are launching a lawsuit. And
sure.
It has been reported in this same article, it has been reported that they are each seeking $1 million in compensation and $5 million in punitive damages.
Because those are the amounts that you put in a lawsuit if you want to get a lot of publicity out of it.
Right.
Looks like it worked.
Yeah, most states don't. Most states, well, at least my state doesn't require you to list amount of damages. You just say in an amount to be proven at the time of trial. But if you really want the news sources to pick it up, you put in a nice big figure, and the people pick it up and report it.
Says the person who has also practiced law. We're not going to do this with every profession that comes up. But Mary Jo has worn a few hats.
This other story is from Mashable. So United Airlines, currently on their 777s, have, in the economy section, 9 seats across. And the current layout is 252. And they're going to add another seat. So I assume it will be something like 343 to go from 9 to 10. And I've been on some of these flights, or these planes that are laid out like this. I don't know where the hell they're going to get the space from.
Well, I was just on a China Airlines flight, and I want to say that it had that layout. If it didn't, I'm not sure where the space went, because the aisles were, I don't know if they had special carts, but they were small. And as I walked down the aisle, I'm a relatively large man, and I can manage to walk down the aisle without running into everybody, which apparently a lot of people, I learned when I sit on the aisle, cannot do. I just was noticing how much more difficult it was just to get down the aisle without, ramming into people.
Yeah.
So the seats get narrower and the aisles get narrower. There's only so much. It's not like the plane gets wider.
That's what I was wondering, if they were, since they'll have to retrofit, are they going to bring in new seats? You take an inch here and an inch there, and it all adds up to more discomfort.
They will be putting in new seats, and the only thing that will be trading it off is that they'll be putting power outlets on each of the seats.
Oh, that's nice.
So you can at least play Angry Birds or whatever while you're miserable.
Well, the advantage too is if it's a two-player game, your seatmate, there's really no armrest in between you anymore. So it'll be easier to cooperate with the multiplayer games that you can now play longer because you have power at your seat.
One of the things that I also heard, and it's not on any of the stories we had lined up, is that I think Delta, maybe a couple other airlines, are now looking at lowering the cost of their first class, business class seats. Because the problem is they have been priced so much higher than economy class seats. If you're on even an 8-hour flight, it was not worth it for most people to spend that much more money, where you could be spending 10 times the amount of money, say, for business class. And so what ended up happening was a lot of people were getting those seats because of loyalty programs or using points rather than using cash because they were priced so high. So now they're going to try to bring the price down a little bit where it might become a more viable thing for people to purchase as an upgrade from being an economy.
The interesting thing, too, is that both JetBlue and I think I heard the announcement that United are going the other direction, is even in their domestic routes, their longer domestic routes, they are introducing lie-flat seats in business class. With JetBlue, it's their new Mint program, and I had a chance to go up to San Francisco Airport and look at that. It's a nice layout. I mean, actually did some nice things in coach, too, but the layout in business class rivals what I have seen on over-the-ocean kind of routes on nice airlines, which, I don't know that how often I even need a lie-flat seat on San Francisco to Boston kind of routes. But now United has announced they're also going to do the same thing. So I think they're doing we'll keep the price the same, but we'll now make the value higher.
Yeah, I would.
Sounds like the same problem.
To work. I mean, just have a nice larger desk maybe and power and everything, and that would be enough, I think, for most people, unless it's a red eye or something. Also in airline news, we have not talked about this since the last show. Virgin America is being purchased. Jen, I know that Virgin is your favorite airline. Also the favorite airline of frequent guest Spud Hilton. Do you think that Virgin is going to lose its virginness? Or is it losing its virginity?
Virginity.
Oh, I should have lived with that.
Gosh, there we go. There's another possible title.
That was the first thing I thought of, is I hope they don't change the planes. I did not read enough articles to find out if that was their intention, but the planes are just so nice. I just hope that. But you know what? Maybe it's my fault, right? I love the airline, but I have not been booking on them.
Why not?
I have been, but apparently not enough. So, but Alaska is a good airline. I mean, I really enjoy flying Alaska. The quality of service there too. So I'm not too worried about it. If it was actually, if it was one of the big three, I would be more concerned if it were Delta,
Right.
American, or United, because in the airline surveys, I know we were doing surveys at TripAdvisor Flights when I was there with the quality of service. JetBlue and American were up here, and I don't remember exactly where Alaska was, but I think it was higher than United, American, or Delta, just by a significant margin.
And everyone raves about Alaska's loyalty program.
Oh, really?
Doesn't it have the reputation for being one of the best loyalty programs?
Well, the problem is it's more limited in terms of routes. I mean, Delta has a reputation as having the worst in terms of actually claiming miles, which kind of helps in a loyalty program. But I haven't heard that one.
I will actually. I've never flown on Alaska, but I'm going to be going up to Fairbanks in June, and I think I'll be.
Does that mean you can fly on? What are they calling it? Virgin Alaska?
No, I think it's Alaska. But I don't know. Mary Jo, you're in the airline industry. Have you heard whether they're rebranding Virgin in the merger?
I haven't heard anything, just
Okay.
what I've seen in the news, which the news reports seem to say everything is still up in the air. They're still pending regulatory
Well, up in the air is a
approval.
good thing to be if you're an airline. So.
Yeah, I don't think that kind of stuff will get announced till after the board of directors on each side votes, and then they
Right.
get regulatory approval. So
Yeah, we're still a little ways away from this.
I would think they would only have one name. Although, quite
Yeah.
honestly, I think they would be better off with Virgin than Alaska, simply because Virgin is actually kind of a global brand. They have many other things, and Alaska seems very regional as a name. I know it in the western part of the U.S., in Seattle and California, they fly and they have a pretty good reputation, but I think in other parts of the United States, they're not as well known. And people on the East Coast, maybe, why would I fly Alaska Airlines? I'm not going to Alaska. Or they may think that it's,
Well, although it works for Southwest now, but
Virgin still has Virgin Atlantic and Virgin Australia, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
right, that's what I'm saying. They could piggyback off of some of that brand name, even though it's going to be a different company.
I vote for Alaska's Virgins.
Evidently, Richard Branson was not a fan of the sale. He did not want it to happen, but there wasn't much he could do about it because he's not the majority shareholder, because he is not an American, and that's what the laws are in the U.S. regarding airline ownership.
What happens to the employees in a merger? What happens to all the Virgin America employees?
Usually they would go and they would be rebranded also. But there's usually also some headquarters jobs that would go away. They would be redundant. But,
Synergies.
You're going to need the same amount of pilots unless you start closing down routes, the same amount of flight attendants, the same amount of maintenance. Well, maybe not the same amount of maintenance crew. That depends on the airline overlap.
Another airplanes or airport story. In Turkey, there's a Syrian man who has been at the airport now for over a year.
I saw this movie.
Yeah, kind of like the Tom Hanks movie, The Terminal. He was trying to get to Europe, but they said he was flying under a falsified passport, and the only place he can fly back to is Syria, where he obviously doesn't want to go. So he has basically been at the airport here. But unlike Tom Hanks, he doesn't have freedom of the terminal. He's basically kind of been kept in a room. And they did an interview with him on Mashable, and he basically said he's read 40 books. He's tried to learn some languages. He started smoking. Yeah, you hear about this. There is the Tom Hanks movie was actually based on an actual story about a guy that was living in the Charles de Gaulle airport. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing was he could have left the story that it was based on. It's just that he wanted to leave to be declared a refugee, and they wouldn't give him refugee status. So he could have left and just been a tourist or a migrant or something else, but he wanted refugee status and he refused to accept anything else, and that's why he stayed at the airport. But I think it was like 10 years he was there.
What is this guy in Turkey doing for money? I mean, is he relying on the kindness of strangers, or if he's locked in a room, are they feeding him?
He said he gets
the movie where he made friends at the airport.
They give him a fast food meal for every meal, and he says the police don't really treat him that well. So,
well, if you're locked in a room, probably not.
On a related note, and I don't know if you saw this story. It was just out yesterday. So various nations of Europe have been taking in Syrian refugees. Vatican City is taking in 12.
Seriously?
Yes, and the Pope went to meet them, and they flew back on the Pope plane, and they're going to live in Vatican City. They found some space for them. And I think it was like 2 families with children and stuff, and that's where they're staying. So Vatican City doing their part, and probably on a per capita basis. Hello? Doing more than anyone else. Are we losing Jen there?
Apparently we're losing Jen.
Yeah, it's been going on for years now. And she can't hear us now, so we can say pretty much whatever we want.
Gary, are you mad at me for some reason?
Oh, no.
Sure seems like it.
No, that's
because
just my
guess
demeanor,
what?
Jen.
All I want to do is hear about your Ethiopia trip. I saw Jim Benning last week, and he was raving about it. And
See, now, if you listened to his podcast, you would have already heard about it, Jen.
I knew that was coming. Fine. We don't have to use this old, decrepit 7-year-old podcast to hear about Gary's amazing trips. We'll
get to that. We'll get to that. Let's do one more news story. And this one I thought was interesting. So, Condé Nast Traveler is saying the Czech Republic is asking English speakers to refer to it as Czechia. Now, most countries have a formal name, and then they have kind of a normal use name, which is a lot smaller. So the United States of America, we just call the U.S. or USA or America. The Republic of France, we call France. The People's Republic of China, China. But there are a couple exceptions to that, and the Czech Republic has been one. You know, it used to be Czechoslovakia, which also was not its formal name. It's just something we called it. But now...
That was not its formal name?
No, it was not. It was the People's... I don't know, something, but it was not
People's Democratic Republic of Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, there was some other stuff to it. And since the Velvet Revolution, where they split off with Slovakia, Slovakia is now just Slovakia, but the Czech Republic has always been this kind of awkward-sounding thing, and they want people to now go to informally call it by the shortened version, which is Czechia. And evidently, this was what they requested back in 1993 when they became independent. You know, call us Czechia. It's the historical name for the region, the place where the Czechs come from. So this goes well back before Czechoslovakia or before anything else. The place of the Czechs is Czechia. And if you think about it, a lot of countries have the IA at the end, which is a Latin thing, meaning referring to where someone is from. So there's Austria, Slovenia, Slovakia, Serbia, Croatia, California, Virginia,
America,
Colombia, all of them. So question is, how many of you are going to start calling it Czechia?
Or change the tags on the website to say Czechia instead of Czech Republic?
I just think it sounds an awful lot like Chechnya. And
that was exactly what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first thought. I mean, you know, we can call it whatever we want, but if they're trying to get more distinctively known, people are going to be looking in the wrong place on the map.
But there's a lot of countries that already have similar sounding names.
Slovakia, Slovenia.
Australia.
Australia.
Switzerland, Sweden, Burundi, Brunei, Mauritius, Mauritania.
When my grandparents met my aunt, who was from Australia, they were surprised that she spoke English because they thought she was from the other one. So,
I spent a lot of time in Australia. I've been to
or something like English,
Australia, and I'm still surprised when I meet Australians that speak English. But I'm bummed. I don't know. I'm tempted to actually start doing this because I do find Czech Republic to be awkward. And I think we also need to find some names for some other countries out there. The Central African Republic, Centris. We were going to Central.
Centria.
And the worst is the Republic of Congo and the Democratic Republic of Congo, because they both call themselves Congolese. And they're both, the short form would be the Congo. But you really can't distinguish between the Republic of Congo and the Democratic Republic of Congo. One's maybe the DRC, which most people know. But then the Republic of Congo is like the RC, which was,
well, what about Ireland and Northern Ireland? You have the same problem there.
Well, Ireland's just Ireland. Northern Ireland is like, it's like York versus New York.
I have a feeling this conversation is going to get us some bad reviews. And I'll take this moment to welcome all of our new listeners, because we had a banner month last year. We had a banner month. We have lots of new listeners, and I don't want us to get in any trouble for this conversation.
No more from Australia. They're gone. So, speaking of podcast listeners, Mary Jo, you got a new podcast.
I do.
Why?
Tell us about it.
Why?
Why? You know?
Didn't anyone warn you?
Well, actually, only after I'd launched. I mean, before I launched, everyone was like, "Yeah, you should do it. You should do it." Uh, for me, what I found was that I travel a lot, and so I would be talking with people, and we would just casually, over coffee or perhaps dinner, about where we'd been, and that I found people saying, "Oh yeah, I've been there. Oh yeah, I've been there. But where else should I go now?" Even if it was to the same city as on a layover. "Oh yeah, I've been to that restaurant. I've been to that museum. Where else should I go?" And it just sort of became a theme that I realized what I was looking for was not where to go, but where else to go. And that sort of was the impetus for evolving it. And when I did some research, there weren't a lot of women doing podcasts in the luxury space, and so I thought, for a long time, and then thanks to some nudges from some podcasting friends, jumped into the fray.
Mary Jo,
and for those of you who are listening or who are watching the show too, we should say that it's Mary Jo just has bad lighting. It's not that she's in the witness relocation program. It's not related to the podcasting that she's trying to be anonymous. So,
and I have no idea why. I've tried relighting this room and I'm stuck.
Mary Jo, what I like about your new podcast, Where Else Should I Go, is that it's very practical. And I think people like tips and information. And I think that is a great way to set yourself apart from some of the others.
Well, what I found is that, I want to reach people early on in the process. This is not designed for people who are getting ready to book a hotel. This is, or plan an itinerary. This is for people who are sitting around talking about where to go on vacation. And so hopefully it'll get somebody enthusiastic about a destination, or if not, they'll just say, hey, that one's not for me, and maybe another episode will. So I try to talk about things that real people would do, and food and beverage and some attractions are just part of that.
I really liked the Galapagos episode, and something that I didn't know about, of course, Galapagos, bucket list, travel destination, but I didn't know that you could stay on a ship or have a land excursion. And so that was a really great part of the conversation where they were talking about both options.
Well, Cheryl and Lisa are great guests, just as I'm assuming my guests next week will be equally well received. And what resonated for me in that is I'd always thought the Galapagos was really a great idea, but I'm not a super strong swimmer. I don't dive, I'm kind of that middle-aged place where I'm not in great shape. But yet they made me realize that, I could do it. I don't have to have that high of a skill level in order to enjoy it. So
as long as you can step over an iguana.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, who can't relate to that?
Now, the one question on the title, Where Else to Go. So, as I understand the concept, it was I've thought about going to X, but I'd never thought about going to Y. And you're going to talk about Y, right?
Sort of, yes.
Except that you've done Venice and the Galapagos, which are bucket list destinations.
Right, but it's not just the destination; it's how to see the destination. Okay. So example, I've got an upcoming guest about a theme park, and of course, theme park is either on everyone's bucket list or the ultimate non-bucket list. But an insider tip that says this is a way to see the park that you wouldn't know otherwise. Again, we all go to Disneyland. We all know to go to one part of it, but where else is there to go? Where else is there to go for that?
But if you do a Where Else to Go episode about Walt Disney World, I do plan to give you grief. Just so you know.
I will hang my head in shame.
No, but you know what I like about that. So say she's doing Disneyland or Walt Disney World or even Legoland, like in my backyard. Where else? People come for more than one day oftentimes, right? And maybe they can only afford to go to the theme park for 1 or 2 days, but their stay is a week long. So what else can you do around that big destination that you hadn't thought of yet?
Exactly. And when we talked about Venice, Jennifer did talk about some of the other islands that you might not think about going outside of Venice. I mean, we forget Venice is just one of many islands there.
Although I didn't know how many. until she was mentioning it. But.
Exactly.
So when your podcast wins its first award for its next episode,
yeah, I hear
where in your house does it go?
Where what?
Where in the house will it go?
Well, I'll have to create a new something to, to
Mary,
hold the Oscar.
Mary Jo, I think you need to bargain with this person who is so excited about the next guest. Tell him that if he could do some promotion for you and take advantage of his large social numbers, that it would help.
What do you think this is, Jen? He said, Mary Jo's got a new podcast. Let's have her on the show. We have listeners.
Guess who the next guest is?
Gary.
While you're on the show, let's talk about the other thing you have going on. In a little over a month, TBEX North America will take place in probably the greatest destination that TBEX has ever been held at before.
Gary's backyard.
So what's on the schedule for it in terms of like pre and post trips, and you have keynote speakers lined up or anything?
We've got so much going on. It's just a matter of dripping out a little bit at a time to keep enthusiasm and momentum going. So we're coming.
Give us an exclusive. What's one of the things you haven't dripped out yet?
No.
Gosh, come on, no one listens to the show.
You get me on the show and you ask about all these questions I can't comment on, and it's so much fun to see you guys, though. No, I mean it's just great. I mean the hosts from the varying areas around, Explore Minnesota, the Mall of America, Minneapolis, and St. Paul, Bloomington. They're all just great people, and there's so much to see in that area that they're giving us a little sampler of the whole region. So,
what surprised you about what they're offering? What you've been traveling for a while, and you've been to Minnesota before, but you were even surprised when they said, "And then we're going to do this, or we're going to go here," and you went, "I didn't know you had that."
Oh, and see now, if I pick one thing, then everyone else is going to feel bad that I didn't.
It doesn't mean the others are bad. This has just surprised you.
Right. And again, because I've been to some of the destinations there, I would say what I'm really looking forward to is the night on the river. Because I think of Minnesota, and lakes, but I just sort of forgot about the river. And I don't know if that was so much of a surprise or just a reminder. So I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Well, it is
in
the
college
headwaters of the Mississippi River. And the Mississippi River, the last waterfall in the Mississippi River is St. Anthony Falls in Minneapolis, which is why there are so many mills and everything in this area. And the area around the river, both the Minnesota River and the Mississippi River in particular, is a national park area in the Twin Cities. So you're actually going to be able to visit one of the National Park Service sites.
In college, we had a folk singer who came from Minnesota, and he used to tell people in the East Coast, he used to sell them a farm that was located conveniently halfway in between Minneapolis and St. Paul. And they would say, well, I don't want to buy just any land. And he said, oh, trust me, you won't be buying just any land.
Mary Jo, I saw in the recent TBEX newsletter, they were also raving about the different family travel options and the family attractions. And TBEX gets a lot of family travel bloggers. So that was really nice to see.
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's a very large niche among the travel blogging and, of course, among travel in general as consumers. So it's really nice to have a family-friendly destination that is has made many of the parties that open to families, people who are traveling with their families. It's a holiday weekend. So if you're coming and bringing your kids, the opening night party is going to be at Nickelodeon Universe. So
Wow.
As long as parents are registered, they can bring the kids along for an evening at the theme park. And they have many other both pre and post functions that are family friendly. So
Excellent. Anything else on the TBEX front? Have you announced any of the keynotes yet?
I have not. We'll be doing that this coming week.
Oh, then you certainly can leak one here. Just
No,
a little.
I can't.
Oh, but you can.
They're
Could
people
you
you
at least
know.
give a hint?
They're people you know.
Is it
People I
anybody on this
know-
podcast? That
No,
in the same
actually,
way-
it's not anyone.
Like I
Not anyone else.
know who the president is, or like I know Chris Christensen?
What did I miss? I just blacked out again. What did I miss? What was the question?
Jen, this is a technical problem, not a chemical problem, right?
Yes, it's a technical problem. But I came back and you were asking about somebody. Are you talking about the keynote speaker or something?
Yes.
We're not talking about the keynote speaker, but we're trying to.
Oh.
What's new in terms of anything to announce in terms of TBEX Europe or TBEX Asia?
Well, preparation for Stockholm is going well. You've probably seen the announcements of the various locations for the sites and everything. And then TBEX in Manila in the Philippines, we will be working with them. We're in the process of working with them. This is a little scoop that's not yet been released, but we are in the process of putting together a sort of an advanced press trip to go over and take a look at some of the things the Philippines has to offer and get people excited about returning there in October. So that is a scoop. That's not been announced yet. I'm just working on all of the details that they've sent me and getting that into some kind of format that we can make public.
That's exciting. And when is TBEX Stockholm?
In July 13 and 15.
So when you talk to the hosts for TBEX Thailand, who did that same thing, they did the pre-trip, so I was one of the people who got to go on a pre-trip, and then, one of the speakers of the conference. Just let them know that I just brought a group of people to Thailand, to Bangkok, so, they got their money's worth, so.
I'll let them know.
Jen, did you still want to know about Ethiopia?
I want to know about Ethiopia, and I want to know about Cambodia.
Okay, well, Ethiopia is a country in Eastern Africa.
What's its nickname?
Ethiopia. Not the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, which is the full name.
Hey, I heard there was this really good podcast that told all about it.
Oh, I've done a couple, actually.
Well, one of the interesting things about the podcast is, Gary, is that we found some of your limits in terms of travel. You got really close to both your travel limits and dying. So that's an interesting story.
Well, the dying thing is a bit. I don't think I was close to death. But so anyways, Ethiopia was fine. Great place. Actually pretty easy to get around. I thought the infrastructure was... it's Africa, but it was much better than most of the African countries I've been to. They had paved roads everywhere. Everything was fine. I was able to get a SIM card, get communication. However, there's one chunk of Ethiopia called the Danakil Depression. And it's basically part of, you may have heard of the East African Rift Valley, which is basically Africa splitting apart geologically. And so it goes all the way down to like Malawi, Lake Tanganyika, and it goes all the way up into Ethiopia and goes through the Red Sea and up to Israel where you have the Dead Sea. So the land is splitting apart. And so in this area called the Danakil Depression, it's below sea level, several hundred feet below sea level, and really, really hot. And it's actually the hottest place in the world where people live. And I don't know why they live there. But there's also this volcano there called the Erta Ale volcano. And it is basically a gigantic lake of lava. It is a giant pool, and it's all just molten lava inside. And so this trip was run by the Ethiopian Tourism Organization, and this is one of the first ones they've ever done. They didn't have a tourism organization until recently. They hired a guy who's actually from the United States. He's Ethiopian, been living most of his life in Seattle, to come in and manage it. And this is one of their first trips they've done. So they're not experts at it. And on our schedule, it simply said, visit the Erta Ale volcano. It was one sentence. Today we are visiting the Erta Ale volcano. That's it. What they did not tell us was that we would have to be walking 9 miles to get to the volcano and 9 miles back. That it would have to be over a lava field in 100-degree heat in the pitch dark because we couldn't start walking until the sunset.
Uphill.
Yeah. Because we're going up a volcano. This was not mentioned, right? They just said, well, we walk there.
And bring water.
Yeah, and based on kind of what the schedule said, we assumed we were kind of going to drive there, and then maybe a walkable path, and no big deal. But it was a big deal, and so okay, we're doing this, and they said to us, first of all, they served us beer before this hike.
What?
Yeah. The tour guide was not what I would call good. So yeah, they're serving us alcohol before the hike in the desert with 100-degree heat, and
in the dark.
So it is really a perfect storm of dehydration. You have strong winds that are hot and high temperature while exerting yourself in a desert, and serving us alcohol beforehand. And basically, the only thing they said to us beforehand was, "You might want to bring some water." Not how much we should bring or anything else, just bring some water.
Not enough for 18 miles plus.
And so, okay. So everyone got like 2 or 3 bottles of water, and we started this hike, and we're about, and here's the thing is that there's a line of us, and all of the guides are at the front of the line, not the back. No one was at the back. So if someone stopped or fell or something, they didn't know. And we're about 3/4 of the way through, and I'm starting to feel dizzy. I'm starting to get the chills, and we're out of water at this point. So we kind of stage a mutiny and take a rest because they're going on their own pace. They do this all the time. They live there. No one bothers to say, "Are you all right?" No one even questions what's happening.
But somebody in your group, I'm sure people.
Yeah, within the group, we were all, concerned about this, figuring out what we're going to do, trying to figure out. There was a couple camels following us. They were a half hour behind that had water, so we ended up waiting for them. But we later find out they have no first aid kit. They have no training in anything, even for things like heat exhaustion. The last half hour, after this rest, we get to the top of the volcano, and we're immediate. So, and this is the other thing. So Robert Reed is on the trip. We do all this hiking through all this stuff to get there. We're hit with these noxious fumes, like an ammonia cloud. Not like, it smells like rotten eggs like you normally see in a volcano, but if you breathe this for a significant amount of time, your lungs will burn out and you'll die kind of cloud. No one told us that this was up here. There's another group from Germany, or I don't know where they were from. They have gas masks. They were clearly prepared. We had nothing. And so after going this, walking hours in the middle of the night to get up there, Robert just turns around. And I am so stubborn that I'm like, God damn it, I've come all the way up here. I'm going to get a picture of this thing. So I just start walking around where the wind wasn't blowing, and eventually everyone figures out that this side is safe because the wind is to our backs. But yeah, and then we walked back, and on the walk back, again, this is over lava. So if you've been to Hawaii,
wait a minute, walk back. Let's talk about the climax here.
It's a sea of molten rock. And if you've ever been near exposed lava, it is really, really, really hot. And
yes.
So you cannot stand on the edge of this and look in, because you could maybe stand it for a few seconds. It is that hot.
How close could you get to it, Gary?
You could, in theory, walk up to
with
the
the
edge. We were maybe 20 feet away. Once you get beyond that edge, it would cool down quite a bit. But here's the other thing. The rock we were walking on around it was very fresh lava. And there were these
lava underneath it.
but there were small lava tubes, it's basalt.
Okay, yeah.
And it was crunching under our feet constantly. So we were collapsing these small lava tubes. And I'm talking, maybe a big one would have been 6 inches or something. So not huge.
Were you worried about it falling in, or were you worried about it gurgling up and hitting you?
If you stood at the edge, the falling in part was actually a legitimate concern, and that's why I was telling you that the ground was kind of collapsing under our feet, because this is brand new rock. It has not had a lot of time to settle. The spitting out hot molten lava part, that was a real risk too, and it actually kind of happened. And again, no one told us about this. Or there was no safety warnings. There were no signs. There was nothing. There were not
But
even
you
the
have
guides.
eyes. You have eyes. You can see this all around you. Were you scared?
No. You kind of had to.
You weren't scared.
No, I mean you didn't want to do anything stupid, but I think if you stood back far enough, you weren't in any immediate danger. There was a small risk, yes. If there was a big, bubble that spit up some stuff, something could, a drop of it could land on you, which would not be good. Although to be honest, I don't. It would be very hot. I don't know what it would do, but yeah, there was that risk. But we were there for maybe a half hour or so, and took some pictures. And yeah, Jim Benning was there, and it was a very tough place to photograph because it's the lava is really, really bright when it's exposed. So this lake was kind of always shifting, and there's this black crust that's on the top of it, except for the seams where you would see this extremely white, hot stuff glowing. So you would have really dark and really bright, and it was very tough to photograph. But yeah, so we arrive there around midnight. We wake up at 4 in the morning, so we get maybe 3 hours of sleep at best, to walk back. On the way back, I trip and fall at one point and skin my knee really bad, worse than it should have been because, again, this rock is really sharp. It's all rather fresh basalt, which is really, really sharp. And skinned my knee. It was a pretty bad. And there we realized no one had a bandage, not even a Band-Aid, to go to this place. And one of the guides looked at it and he just sort of went, that was it. Not even, oh, that sucks, let's do something.
Ethiopian
let's
first
that.
aid. Yeah.
No, it's just sort of like, that sucks. So the moral of this story kind of was, you really have to be careful when having a tour guide. Now, since I've posted about this, I did a podcast and I wrote a blog post. Other people have said that they've been there, that they understood everything I was saying, but they didn't have as bad of experience because I think they had a different tour operator that was doing it. So I don't know why they picked the group, the ones that we did. This is called the Afar region, and the Afar people kind of run and maintain a lot of the guiding operations, and I don't think it's, for the most part, very professional. They get money, and so long as they get the money, then they go through the motions of, we'll walk up there with you and back, but that's it. There's no, they had no radios. And I should say, it took us 4 hours to drive via a road to get to the point where we left the road, to then drive 3 hours off-road through the desert to get to the spot where we started to walk 4 hours. So if something had happened, I started thinking, so I work with Allianz Insurance, and I've seen like their war room and everything for how they evacuate people. And I just started thinking while I was up there, it's like, how the hell would they get me out of here? Because this is in a corner near Eritrea and Djibouti. Eritrea doesn't like Ethiopia that much. They don't have good relations. It's not as if there's rescue helicopters in Eastern Africa just waiting around to rescue people. The best I could think of is that they put you on a camel. Let's say, someone broke their leg or something. They would have to take you by camel to then take you by car to drive you. And it would probably be, maybe 12 hours to get you anywhere. That's a best case scenario. But yeah, that's my Ethiopia story.
Wow. Well, I saw some of Jim's pictures, and he took a great one of you, a silhouette of you, photographing. It's really neat.
The silhouette photos actually worked really well because, again, it was really dark, but you have this very bright glow coming from the lava. I took some silhouette photos of Jim and some of the other people that were with us. So how's Cambodia, Chris?
A little more ready for tourism than the Afar region of Ethiopia. So it was interesting to see actually how ready Siem Reap, for instance, where Angkor Wat is. They were saying 10 years ago it had 5 hotels, and now it has 185. So there's really quite a big tourist infrastructure there.
I was there in 2008, and it was mainly guest houses. I'm trying to think if there were formal hotels. So what did you think of Angkor itself?
You know, I thought the best comment that somebody said about Angkor is later on we're in Bangkok and we have an extra day, and someone says, well, why don't we go out to the
Ayutthaya?
Yes, the UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is the old capital, which has ruins. And somebody looked at it and went, oh, it's a bunch of ruined temples. It looks like it's Angkor, but smaller. You know, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's I'm sure it's an amazing site, but I think once you've been to Angkor, everything that is ruined temples is going to be, oh, it's like Angkor Wat, but smaller, because it's huge. Basically 20 miles by 20 miles and 300 different temples. It's just fascinating in terms of the scale of it. And Angkor Thom, 3 kilometers by 3 kilometers with a wall and a moat and everything like that. It was fascinating. I really did enjoy it. But it was very hot and humid. That was the thing that we knew it was going to be, but does sap your energy a bit. I think when we left Bangkok, it was 102 that day with high humidity and was going up to 111. So,
yeah.
So how did you avoid the lava?
Successfully, completely successfully. No, the closest I've gotten to lava is on Hawaii. I've stood close enough to touch lava that was flowing at me fairly slowly at Volcanoes National Park at the Pu'u'o'o vent. So,
I actually think Angkor, it was not put on that new Wonders of the World list, which I thought was a travesty, because I think it is probably the top attraction I've ever seen in Asia. Maybe one of the top.
Yeah.
It is definitely a top 5 in the world. And you're right in terms of the size. If you ever want to do something cool, go to Google Earth, and you can see Angkor from space, because it's like this gigantic square or rectangle in the middle of Cambodia.
Well, and there's the square of Angkor Wat, and then there's the square of Angkor Thom, which is 3 times bigger on each side. And then if you look to the sides, you'll also see some of the remains of the ancient reservoirs that they were using to feed all the rice fields, which are still fairly noticeable on the map. I mean, it's amazing, what the Khmer Empire at that time. Angkor Thom may have been the most populous, or among the most populous cities in the world at the time in the 1400s, when they decided to move.
Did you go to Tonle Sap at all?
No.
Which is okay. That's a very interesting thing to do if you're ever in Siem Reap, which is basically it looks like a lake. It's a widening of the Mekong River, was what it really is. And there are people that live on the river in floating villages. And
we went to a floating village, but we didn't go to the one that people usually go to, which has a lot of tourists. We went to one where we were the only tourists there, which is a little further down the lake. There's quite a few people who live on that the largest lake in Southeast Asia. 5 times larger in the rainy season. We were there in the dry season. It's still a big lake in the dry season, but you're driving past these like when we get in the boat up on the shore, you can see houses that are built away from the river and then are up on 20 feet of stilts. And our guide is pointing at him and saying, yeah, they had last time we had the floods in 2012, they had a meter of water in those. I mean, so the lake just gets huge when the rainy season comes. But yeah, we did go out there.
Yeah, I heard it was like a 10-meter difference in the height of the lake.
Yeah.
Which is enormous. Well, enough of us yapping.
Well, wait a sec, Gary. I was still wanted to ask Chris some questions. Chris, this was a trip organized with Amateur Traveler, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was an Amateur Traveler trip. It was, how many were there? Total was 10. So there were 9 listeners of Amateur Traveler and myself. And
have you traveled with them before on any of the previous Amateur Traveler trips?
2 of the people who came had been with me in southern Morocco, and then one was somebody who I knew from here, whose parents listened to the show. So a young woman.
That's pretty neat. And so what was it like traveling in a group versus traveling on your own?
Oh, see, so we talk about, traveling on your own. When my family went to Ireland, for instance, my whole family went, so that's my wife and my son and my daughter's boyfriend at the beginning of the trip and fiance at the end of the trip, and then 3 other friends, and so we were 8 of us anyway. So it's not uncommon that when we're traveling just with a regular family trip, we've got 8 people.
But that's still
something
people
like that.
you know versus
It's still people I know, yes. So, but it was a good group of people. I find when I hang out with listeners of the show, I enjoy them. I really find that we have enough in common because of that common bond that that I don't worry at all about. Well, am I going to get a bunch of whiners or something like that? Besides, it was right there on the website. No whining. So. That solves
that problem.
Well, yeah. I can't wait to hear about whatever trip you're going to take with the Amateur Traveler next year.
Well, we're actually talking about what trip we'll take next year, and we're looking at the possibility that when TBEX the Philippines happens, my wife and I may want to go around some in the Philippines, and we're looking at the possibility of did we want to do an Amateur Traveler trip at that time. I don't know if people can get their act together in 6 months versus a year. It's amazing. Some people need, even with a year, they're saying, I can't get time off at work a year and ahead. I have to have more warning, which is just amazing to me.
So restrictive.
Yeah.
And we complain if we have to put something together in a week. Because I'm guessing most of us, if we said, hey, can you go to fill in the blank some great destination next week, we'd be looking at our schedules to make it happen.
As long as there wasn't another trip. I had one of those come up where, I will be in Germany in June with the tourism board, and something came up for a possibility, and I think it was Ireland. It's like, sorry. Yeah, booked.
4 weeks is a good booking time for me. 3 to 4 weeks. I usually know what the month looks like. I don't like planning a year to 6 months in advance. A week is too short notice for me to get a hall pass. 3 to 4 weeks is usually pretty good.
I like a little more than 4 weeks if it's trying to fit into my schedule. But, but yeah, if you name the right place in a week and I got time on my schedule, you bet. And permission from Joan to go someplace.
So where are you planning to go next?
I'm just going to the East Coast on my next trip for a wedding, and then going up to the Finger Lakes. But I've got a trip to Germany planned in June. Well, and then of course Minnesota in May.
That's right. You going anywhere interesting, Jen?
I just got back from skiing in Mammoth, and that was a family ski trip with friends, and it was really fun.
I will be going there in June.
Well, you won't be skiing probably, right?
No,
so
it's for SATW conference. I'll be speaking.
Oh, they back in Mammoth?
Central States this year, yeah.
It was beautiful, and I really liked the drive on the 395. Next time I will put in time to stop at some of the places on the 395 because that was really neat. But having been to several Vail ski resorts now and other ski resorts, it was really interesting. Cora and I had a bad customer service experience at Mammoth, but our friends who were doing the same trip with us had the exact opposite experience. They were getting great customer service. So that was really interesting, but it really tainted me a little bit in the sense of, wow, they really didn't treat me that nice, like bordering rude, which does not endear me to want to go back, except for that I loved traveling with another family. So that's something to keep in mind when we're talking about all these trips and our trips, is that everybody has a different experience, often even to the same place.
Oh, sure. If you do get to Mammoth, Gary, I would recommend Manzanar, which is nearby, as well as Bodie State Park, which is my favorite ghost town. I have been
to Manzanar. I will probably, as part of my quest to visit all the national parks, I will be going to Kings Canyon and Sequoia, because that'll be an easy opportunity to visit those two. And from there, I head to Alaska. And in a couple weeks, I'm going to Macedonia.
Oh, cool. So you're doing that trip that you were planning so many other times.
Well, yeah, there's a conference, Adventure Travel Trade Association is doing an event in Macedonia, and I'm going to go a week early and drive around, go to Albania, Kosovo, Serbia, Bosnia, just kind of drive around the region. And then in July, I'm going on a G Adventures trip flying to Kazakhstan, and then go to Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan.
Are you going to sublet your apartment?
No. It will be here waiting for me. But I have no desire to do that, and I have no need to. So, and given the way my apartment building works, it would be kind of awkward and odd to do it because they only give me one key. So,
all right.
there's that.
What about our tips?
Oh yeah, let's go into that. I will actually go first. So, if you are a photographer of any level, you may use a program called Lightroom or maybe Photoshop. And there are other programs that you can use with it, extensions or plugins. And some of the best were from a company called Nik Software, N-I-K, and they recently got purchased by Google. And they had a collection of plugins for doing black and whites, sharpening, color correction, and whatnot. And Google has recently made their entire collection of plugins available for free. So just do a search on Nik Software plugins, Google, and you should be able to easily find it. So the good news is they're now free. You can install them with Lightroom or Photoshop. The bad news is they're probably going to stop developing it. So this is kind of the end of the road for these titles, but I'm guessing they should still be pretty good for at least the next year, maybe 2 years or 3 years. And they're pretty good. I've been using Silver FX Pro for doing my black and white image processing for quite a while. I know some other people that have been using their color correction process software, and they're really good, so check that out. Chris, you got a pick for us this week?
Yeah, I think I actually already started to talk about it. If you happen to be in the region east of the Sierras in California, my favorite California state park, and there are really quite a number of very good state parks in California, is Bodie State Park. And Bodie is an old gold mining town that the gold mine didn't play out until, I want to say, the 1930s off the top of my head. And then the town was abandoned, and it has been left in a state of arrested decay. That is, they don't let it fall down, but they don't fix it up. So you can see the table is still set with the dishes, but there's a 1/4 inch of dust on them. And as a photographer especially, I'll put a link in the show notes to my pictures from Bodie. I've been there a couple times. Just wonderful light there, and just a very interesting place to go with your camera. You can still see the schoolroom set up with the lesson on the easel at the front of the classroom, and the desks all ready to sit and take your notes. So Bodie State Park in California.
I've not been to Bodie. It's on my list.
You should.
Jen, you got something for us?
I do. Last weekend I was at the LA Times Festival of Books moderating a panel on travel deals, and I got to talk to Warren Chang of Fly.com, and he has also worked with Travel Zoo, and John Eichenberger of Trivago. And even though we've heard of these sites, I just wanted to remind our listeners about the deals that you can get from there. Warren was talking about flights and vacation packages to South Africa. South Africa's on the cheaper side right now, and he was telling me about a deal that was, I think it was like $1,600 or $1,700 that included, it was more than a week's stay, and it included your flight, your hotels, and your transfers from LAX, and that's usually the price of the ticket, a low ticket. And then with Trivago, they have a Trivago.com/hotel prices. You can check out, they have a month-by-month chart where they talk about the average overnight accommodation prices for, a standard room in 35 popular North American cities. And it goes month by month, so you can see what the history's been and what's cheap and what's... So I was looking at that, and for April, the cheapest average price rooms was Niagara Falls, Mexico City, both of those under $100. Niagara Falls, $82. Mexico City, only $97. And there was one other one that looked really good, $125 in Salt Lake City. So just when you're looking for travel deals, don't forget the standbys, and Fly.com, Trivago, Travel Zoo.
With the South Africa, do you know if the flights were the Delta flight through Atlanta to Johannesburg? Because that's one of the fastest ways to get from the U.S. to South Africa, where you don't have to do all of the crazy routing through, Heathrow or something like that.
South African Airways flies direct from Dulles and JFK.
Oh, they flying direct now? Oh, interesting.
Yeah. No, they have for a while. I did it in 2010 or 11,
I haven't priced it out for a while.
Mary Jo, do you got something for us?
I do. And I don't even know how I discovered this company, but it's called Paribus, Paribus, and it's .co, not .com. And basically, it's a site where you can connect your various online shopping habits. And for me, that's predominantly Amazon. And then they continually troll for price reductions. And because Amazon has a price guarantee. And
this is after you have purchased something.
After you have purchased it. Now, okay, could we do this ourselves? Yes. But once I purchase something, I'm not going back to watch the price. And you connect your account, and they send you a notice when there's a price drop. They process it, and you get a little email saying your credit card has been credited for that. And depending, obviously, on the purchase prices of things you buy, it may be cents or some real money. But I got a few little emails this week and saved a couple of bucks on something that I otherwise wouldn't have known about. And it all adds up.
If you want to save money before the purchase, there's a Chrome plugin called Honey that will look every time you go to a site, do I have any coupon codes for this site?
Ooh.
And so, again, you don't have to be paying any attention. You can completely ignore Honey, and it will come to your attention when you're someplace that it can save you money.
Right. I have a Chrome extension I don't know that I use for that kind of price comparison. I don't remember the name of it. So this is for after, and I think it's for 90 days after your purchase, they troll for a price reduction. And so far, the things that I've purchased are the kind of things, that cost $6.99 and maybe you save 27 cents. But obviously, if you're purchasing some major gear or anything through Amazon, that could add up.
Speaking of Amazon, I just purchased 2 LED desk lamps, and they're very flat light surfaces that I'm going to put on either side of my monitor. So I'm going to be able to finally get decent lighting when I do Google Hangouts like this. Most of you are listening, but you'll notice that like half of my face is illuminated and the other half is dark because I'm backlit, which is where the window in this room is. So I'm going to be able to put them on either side of the monitor and get finally very nice lighting and be able to do this properly. So.
And gosh, Gary, that might be a link I should be looking into, huh?
Well, once you get out of the witness relocation program, that'd be something you could think about.
I turned on every light in the room, but I do have a window behind me, and that's the problem, I think.
Mary Jo, do you
dimmable,
record?
Which is nice.
Do I what?
Do you record via Google Hangout to record your podcast?
I have always done on Skype just because that's been easier, but I certainly could consider Google Hangouts. Or in person. I've done an in-person one too. So.
Nice.
All right, then. Let's start to wrap things up. Chris, what is new in the Amateur Traveler this week?
We just did what I think is going to become one of my favorite episodes of the Amateur Traveler on Provence in France. And even my editor, when he delivered the thing, said, okay, now I'm planning a trip to Provence. So definitely a place that is on my list to explore more of.
Excellent. Jen, where can people find you online?
You can find me on latimes.com travel for my WebBuzz column where I'm reviewing travel websites and travel apps.
Excellent. Mary Jo, where can people find you?
You can find me online on Twitter at MJ Manzanares, and you'll never be able to spell that, so that's okay. And on tomorrow morning, I release another podcast featuring you, Gary, talking about Micronesia. And you can also find me there at whereelsetogo.com and on my travel blog at travelingwithmj.com.
Okay, just a little help with you here when you're promoting your podcast. And on iTunes.
Oh.
Because that's where you're going to get the people. Yeah.
That's where I found you.
Oh, thank you guys. I'm still new at this.
And you got to promote people leaving like a review on iTunes. Because the more of those you get, the better.
And leave a
I should do that, but I just don't anymore.
Well, speaking of, we had a lot of new listeners last month, so if you are listening to This Week in Travel and you are enjoying yourself, please write a nice review for us on iTunes.
And if you're wondering why we don't release it every week, that's part of the mystery.
If you are somebody who just started listening to the show and you saw it promoted someplace, because clearly someone was highlighting the show and we don't know who, it would be nice to know. So drop us an email.
All right, then. As usual, you can find me at everything-everywhere.com and on iTunes at the Global Travel Conspiracy. This week I talked to Jamie Sweeting. He's the head of sustainable travel at G Adventures and the former VP of environmental stuff at Royal Caribbean, and we talk about sustainable travel.
That's really the title, was environmental stuff.
I can't think of his exact title, but he was the VP of that. We talked about sustainable tourism.
Environmentia.
Anyways, it was a very interesting episode. But until next time, please go outside, and while you're doing so, you might want to download Mary Jo's new podcast to listen on your iPhone while you're walking.